So I have a fun habit of not telling my mom important things, and this is finally one she can't get mad at me for. Hello to all the mothers and sons out there. My name is Joseph Bellardo, and I'm absolutely thrilled to be speaking about my wonderful mother today, Denise Bellardo. My mom has always been the most important person in my life. She never ceases to amaze me with her unconditional love for everyone around her, her selfless nature, and her ability to lose her phone, wallet, keys, and purse sometimes in the span of 5 minutes. My mother's the kind of person who's never met someone that they didn't know, and she can talk to anyone about anything for hours. I've often found myself doing the classic nod and smile while she talks to one of her friends outside church or when we encounter one of her coworkers on a run. I'm not kidding when I say she will literally talk to anyone about anything. When COVID hit, I thought everyone wearing masks would make it harder for her to have these conversations, but of course I was wrong, and if anything, she's had more of a reason to reach out than ever. A perfect example of her naturally extroverted personality and empathy was during my 8th grade year, when Nashville received snow much to the same scale that we recently experienced. That morning, our paper deliverer tried to stop in our driveway, but of course didn't, and slid all the way down the driveway into our backyard. Imagine my mother's surprise, who is an early riser, when she saw a silver Prius stationary in our backyard just sitting there. Of course, my mother's first reaction, not knowing who it was in the car or why it was in our backyard, was to go out and invite the somewhat bewildered driver into our house, make her coffee, and basically make friends with her for the morning. When I stumbled out of bed at the early hour of 10 or 11 and saw Jane and my mother drinking coffee and enjoying some breakfast, I still thought I was dreaming. But this practice of killing strangers with kindness has always been one of my mother's guiding principles. Every day, she goes out of her way to make the day better for anyone she interacts with, whether it be her favorite Kroger cashiers, Regina and Donnie, or our garbage man, whose truck I have seen her literally chase at a full sprint to give him his Christmas present. One of my favorite stories of her kill them with kindness mentality comes from my early childhood, around kindergarten. One day we were driving back from school, and a snapping turtle emerged from the bog-like depths of the roadside creek to slowly begin crossing the street. Instead of swerving into the other lane to avoid hitting what has got to be one of the least lovable creatures out there, she stopped both lanes of traffic with her car so she could get a box out and carry the turtle across the street, who literally tried to eat her fingers the whole way. In many ways, that story's a microcosm for our relationship. I, of course, am the snapping turtle. Yes, I just compared myself to a snapping turtle. And she carries me through life despite my best efforts. Even when I don't deserve it, she keeps me on the right path, helping me through the challenges of life. And honestly, my room is basically a glorified bog sometimes, so maybe the metaphor fits in more than one way. Having finished 4 marathons and 4 half marathons, one would have expected me to be a somewhat decent runner. But for anyone who knows me, that is absolutely not the case. My athletic career is maybe one of the great what-ifs of the last decade, but that being said, my mother's never missed a track meet or a soccer game, no matter how poorly I finished in the 800 and how painful it must have been for her to watch. One could understand her coming to my junior school meets, but I started track in 4th grade, which means I've been subjecting my mother to my horrendous athletic experiences for 7 years. But no matter how poorly a game or a run would go, or how frustrated I would be at the end, my mother would always tell me I'd done perfectly, and just focus on the one or maybe no things I did right. Even in the rain during a JV soccer scrimmage, she would be there with a poncho and an umbrella cheering me on from the sidelines. And even now, she finds a way to make it to every mock trial competition. And despite her little knowledge of law to begin with, she now has an almanac-like knowledge of the rules of procedure, and she loves to quote phrases like preponderance of the evidence and propensity to me in arguments. What's most impressive is that she does it all despite a full-time job as a physical therapist, serving on countless committees at our church, being a class mom, heading up the sunshine committees at both Harpeth Hall and MDA. I'm not even sure if that's allowed, and even sharing this very breakfast last year. But despite her incredible busyness, she goes out of her way to make every day special. As many of you know, I am not a morning person, but my mom could not be more different. She voluntarily wakes up at 5:30. After she runs, she comes home, makes breakfast, pries me out of bed with a crowbar, with an inner happiness and positivity I've never understood. In junior school, if I ever got out of the car without saying, "I love you," she'd roll the window down and yell, "I love you," as loud as she could in front of all of my friends. And despite my somewhat childish embarrassment at the time, as my time at MBA comes to an end, I've begun to realize that, among other things, it's the simple "I love yous" and "have a good days" that I'll miss more than anything in the world. As all of the young men in the room know, our moms are rocks, and we'd basically be helpless without them. They constantly put themselves second to make our lives easier, especially when we don't deserve it. I mean, my mom literally watched 9 seasons of The Office just because my dad and I wanted to. Mom, you've always been my superhero, and I don't know what I'm going to do with you next year. You always have the answer to any problem I could have, and you've pushed me to be the person I am. And one day, I hope I can embody some of the same values and things you do. I love you, Mom.